Spent the last number of days reading about one of the great kings of Israel, Yehoshaphat. At times he aligns himself with the northern kingdom, Malchut Achav and Achav's son, and that's seen as being but besides that, he's a great king. He trusts God. He sets up a whole legal judicial system like the Torah defines. He brings back ethics and morality and godliness to the society. And let's see what happens after his life ends. פרק כ"א, וישכב יהושפט עם אבותיו, ויקבר עם אבותיו בעיר דוד, וימלוך יהורם בנו תחתיו. Yehoshaphat dies. He's buried with his fathers in the city of David, and his son Yehoram succeeds him as king. ולא אחים בני יהושפט, עזריה ויחיאל, וזכריהו ועזריהו, ומיכאל ושפטיהו, כל אלה בני יהושפט מלך ישראל. So in addition to Yehoram, who was his son, he had a number of other sons, right? Yehoram had a number of brothers, right? Azariah, Yechiel, Zechariah, Azariah, Michael, Shphatayahu. You can see all of them have names very much connected. Theophoric name, I believe, is the term. Names with allusions to God, right? Yehoram has the Yud Hey, and then we have the Yud Hey at the end of Azariah, and the Aleph Lamed El at the end of Yechiel and Michael. So, and this is seems similar to the life of Yehoram, where life of Yehoshaphat, where God was so involved, and Yehoram would always seek out God. Vayitain lahem avihem matanot rabot lechesef ulezahav ulemigdanot im arei mitzurot biuda v'etamlacha natan Yehoram ki hu abachor. So Yehoram gets the kingdom. He is the oldest, so he becomes king. And it's not as if he completely, left out his other children. He gave them silver and gold and cities that they would be, mayors or whatever it might be of, they would be in charge of. So they all were given much. Nevertheless, even though he was giving the kingdom, Vayakam Yoram al Mamlachet David Vayitchazek Vayaharog et Kol Echav Becharev Vigam Misarei Yisrael. Tragically, what does Yehoram do when he becomes king and he is secure? He takes firm hold of his father's kingdom. Must have been a person with a lot of insecurity, because he kills all of his brothers as well as some of the officers of Israel. Anybody who he thought might be able to replace him, might to challenge him in power, I would imagine, is what he does, and he kills them all. Terrible, terrible story, terrible king. Now we're told a little bit more about him. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 8 years. Not a very lengthy reign, which is not so surprising considering how terrible he was. There would be other people who would be upset of him. Vayelech b'derech malchei Yisrael ka'asher asu beit Achav. Right, and so he follows not the ways of his father Yehoshaphat, a great king, not the ways of his ancestor David. Who does he follow? He follows the kings of Israel. He follows the house of Achav and Izebel, the worst of all kings of Israel. And why is that? Kivat bat Achav haitalo isha vayashara be'enei Hashem. Because he married a daughter of Achav, and he did that which was displeasing in the eyes of the Lord. And the wife of Achav led him astray. Interesting to think about here. We talked about the relationship between Yehoshaphat and Achav, and God was upset when Yehoshaphat was willing to go to war with Achav. When Yehoshaphat said, yes, my soldiers are your soldiers, right? We're all part of Bnei Israel. We're all part of one nation. However, God said, you shouldn't be helping those who hate me, was what the prophet, Michayahu, if I remember, said back. And here, who is the one who marries off Yehoram to the daughter of Achav? Is it Yehoram takes this woman as his wife? Is it perhaps Yehoshaphat, this great king, chases away idolatry, but maybe some of the allegiances and some of the relationships, specifically the relationship with Malchut Achav and Malchut Yisrael, ultimately, in a sense, destroys his legacy, because he marries his son to the daughter of Achav, and as a result of that, his son, what it says here is his son becomes corrupt. His son goes and kills all the other, all of his brethren, all the other people who could possibly become king. And so it's hard to read this knowing the way the marriages were done in the in that time period. And obviously, there are different marriages. Not everything is the same, but especially political marriage, a future king, alliances, etc. To not think of maybe a terrible error that was made by Yehoshaphat, and that's what God and the prophets, when they told him those times that he worked together with Achav. Achav was killed in battle, and the second time, his desire to have these shipbuildings and to go to Tarshish to get gold, and those ships are destroyed, all because of his association with Achav and Achav's empire and Achav's son. And what was worked together with Achav caused destruction. Bringing that house into the house of David, bringing it to the southern kingdom, caused terrible, terrible destruction. That's what it continues. Let's see verse 7. V'lo ava Adonai lashchit et Beit David leman habrit asher karat leDavid v'chasher amar latet lo nir levanav kol yomim. God refrained from destroying the house of David entirely because of the covenant, the brit he made with David, and the promise that he made that David will have a lamp right there, even if the fire is flickering and not so strong. There'll always be a flame. There'll always be a fire of his descendants for all time as leaders of Bnei Israel. Bi'amav pasha Edom mitachat yad Yehuda vayimlichu alei Elimelech. During the reign of Yehoram, the Edomites rebelled against Yehuda, and they set up a king of their own town. During the time of Yehoshaphat, Yehoshaphat was able to defeat them. We read about the dramatic battle. We don't have it in the book of Kings. We have it here in the book of Divrei hayamim, where he goes and he prays to God, and he gathers all of Bnei Israel and says, God, this is, you took us here. You were the one who gave this to us. Please fight for us. This is right. You're the one with the strength, not us. And so we see here that perhaps special protection during the time of Yehoshaphat for turning to God is no longer, and thus the Moabites rebel. Vayavor Yehoram im sarav v'chol rechav imo. Vayihi kam, we're in verse 9, pasuk tet, laila vayachet Edom asovev alav v'yatzarei rechav. Yehoram, right, so this was the Edomites. Yehoram does go, and he goes to battle against I'm sorry, I said Moab for some reason. He goes to battle against the Edomites, against Edom, and he goes at night with all of his chariots, and he attacks the Edomites who surrounded him. Edom had been in rebellion against Yehuda to this day. Az tifsha livna ba'etahi mitachat yado ki azav et Adonai Elohei avotav. And Livna also rebelled. Is that some sort of Lebanon, perhaps? Livna, because Yehoram had forsaken, had no longer a relationship with the God of his father. So Edom is able to get out from under the control of Bnei Israel, and so is Livna at this time. And in fact, if it's not enough, what we've seen is killing of his children, is not worshiping of God, presumably. We're told that, what does he do? Gam hu asav vamot b'harei Yudah, vayazen et yoshvei Yerushalayim ve'adach et Yudah. Moreover, he built shrines in the hill country of Yehuda. He led astray the inhabitants of Jerusalem and made Judah wayward, right? He moved them away from listening to a God. And here, right, we've said many times in this book, we're sanitizing David and Shlomo and others and saying how great they are. But of course, there is an inherent lesson here to those during the Second Temple period, which is saying, if you look at what happened during Yehoshaphat's time, look at when he relied upon God, when he prayed to God, when he came to the temple, when he kept the temple strong, his kingdom was secure. There was little to no war. When he went and sort of abandoned God to an extent and allied himself with other nations, even if it was the northern kingdom of Israel, he was told that that was not a good thing. And look what happens here if you abandon God. Those who you have control over, you will no longer have control over. The message is quite clear as to how in this book, even when they make the Davidic kings look great, at times there were kings who were bad, and the way that they are described. Let's continue in verse 12. In verse 12, we have something that we don't have in the book of Melachim, which is fascinating because it's with a very famous character, somebody who we all know. Vayavo elav michtav me Eliyahu hanavi lemor. Ko amar Adonai Elohei David avich. Tachat asher lo halachta b'darchei Yehoshaphat.
I think we just lost Rabbi Yidler.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was just my phone.
I'm
No,
sure I'll be
I-
back in less than a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's other times when we see a letter from Eliyahu.
Yeah. That's a letter, right? Okay. Maybe he doesn't realize he's off.
Oh, he's back now, I think.
Sorry, I seem to have had some technical difficulties. I'm not sure
good.
what happened or where I left you, but I'll start again. Did we start Pasuk Yud Bet, the letter from Elijah?
Yeah, just started it. Then.
So we'll just read it again. Vayavo elav michtab me'elu anavi lemor. Ko amar Adonai Eloi David avich. Tachat asher olachta b'darchei Yoshafat avich u'v'darchei Asa melech Yudah. So a letter comes from Eliyahu the Navi. And he says, because you didn't follow David, since you didn't follow the ways of your saintly father Yehoshaphat and your saintly grandfather Asa, vatelech b'derech malchei Yisrael v'taznet Yehuda v'et Yoshvei Yerushalayim kehaznot beit achav v'gam et achecha beit avicha hatovim mimcha haragta. But what did you do? You followed the practice of the king of Israel. You led Judah astray. You led the inhabitants of Jerusalem to be like the house of Achav. And you also killed your brothers of your father's house who were better than you. Hine Adonai no magefa gedola be'amecha, uvelanecha, uvenashecha, uvechol rechushecha. Fire and brimstone, no surprise with Eliyahu. There's going to be a great plague upon your people, upon your sons, upon your wives, upon all of your wealth, all of your possessions. Viata bechalayim rabim b'machela me'echa. As for you, you'll be stricken with some sort of bowel, some sort of stomach disorder year after year until your bowels dried up. And so what happens is all of a sudden the Philistines, we haven't heard of the Philistines for generations. They haven't been bothering Bnei Israel as far as we knew, but all of a sudden God stirs up their spirit. And the Arabs who were neighbors of the Cushites, all of these different groups, and they start to attack the Malchut Yudah, Vayalu v'Yudah, Vayivaku, Vayishbu et kol ha'rechush hanimsa lebeit hamelech v'gam banav v'nashav v'noshar lo ben ki im yoachaz katon banav. And they march up against Yehuda, and they sort of lay siege, and they manage to breach all of the walls and all of the fortified cities that had been built by Yehoshaphat and the others in the past, and they carry all the property that was in the king's palace. All of his sons, all of his wives were all brought, were all taken as captives, as loot. Only one son, Yehoachaz, remained. And God afflicted him. It's even worse. It's not right. It doesn't die in the battle. There's no mercy of that mercy of death. He is sick. He sees his kingdom. He sees everything that he has destroyed, and he has this terrible, incurable bowel disease. Vayihi le'amim yamim u'ka'et seit ha'ketz le'amim shnayim yatz'u me'av im chalyo vayamat betachluim ra'im v'lo asulo imo sreifak kisreifat avotav. And at some point, maybe a period of 2 years later, his bowels just dropped out, whatever that means, because of his disease, and he died a gruesome death. His people did not make a fire for him like the fire for his father. They didn't respect him. They didn't want to show him. They didn't want to honor him. Ben 32 shana haya b'malcho 8 shanim malach b'Yerushalayim vayelech below chemda vayikbaru bir David v'lo b'kvarot hamlachim. So he died after his 8-year reign at age 40, and when he died, he was unpraised. He had to be buried. He's a corpse. It's Tzelem Elokim, Demut B'Tzalmenu Demutenu. He has to be buried, and he's buried in the city of David, but not in the tomb of kings. He's not buried with his father. He's not buried with his grandfather. The people recognize that this was a terrible, terrible person. And so we have here this story, very, very sad, very upsetting story. Terrible King Yehoram. Tried to count as to maybe, some of it is to blame on Yehoshaphat for his alliances that he had with Beit Achav, but ultimately it is Yehoram who allows this family member from the house of Achav to influence him and to change him. And Yoram is described both here and back in the book of Lachim for his wickedness, his marriage into the Edomite families. But here we have much more detail. We have the murder of his brothers. We have the building of Bamot, and most importantly and significantly, we have the letter from Eliyahu. And what's interesting about it, and what's striking about it, is if we go back to the stories of Eliyahu all involve Malchut Yisrael. They all involve the Israelite kingdom. Eliyahu goes to Achav. The student Elisha is always with the kings of Israel. None of them are with the kings of David. The only time in the entire Tanakh where we see Eliyahu with the kings of David, if I'm correct, is here in this book. And why is it in this book? And why is it here? And why does Eliyahu do it? Because the king of Yehudah, the descendant of David, is not acting like a king of Yehudah. He's not acting like a descendant of David. He's acting like somebody who is a leader of the Israelite kingdom, somebody who is from the family of Achav, and therefore it has to be the full wrath of God has to come down upon him. And there is nobody better that's happier to represent the wrath of God than, of course, Eliyahu Hanavi.